Digging to survive. I can see hints. Chapters 21 to 40. Chapter 21. Producing a runic crossbow. 2 attack modes. System notification. 1. Cured meat plus 70 milliliters of water completed transaction. Wind rune plus 1. Klein had just logged out of the chat channel when the transaction notification followed closely behind. I've gathered all of them. He was delighted as he opened the manufacturing page. At the bottom of the manufacturing list, he could see the formula for the synthesis of runic crossbows. Perfect runic crossbow. Iron 9 halves, copper 11 halves, wind rune 2 halves. Crossbow bolts. Iron 7 halves. Select perfect runic crossbow and crossbow bolts. Confirm forging. System notification. Iron 4, copper 2, wind rune 2. System notification. Perfect runic crossbow has been successfully forged. Klein's left hand had a crossbow with a compact and exquisite structure, and his right hand had 5 crossbow bolts carved out of a mold. Long-range weapon in hand. The runic crossbow wasn't heavy. It was about a foot in length. There was no bowstring, and a trigger at the bottom. The body of the crossbow was gray and had many complicated patterns. There were wind icons on both sides. Behind it, there was an ammunition slot. There were a total of 5 openings at the back of the crossbow, which meant that 5 bolts could be loaded at once. The bolts were palm long. Each of the arrowheads was sharp. Perfect runic crossbow. A runic combat device. It has 2 firing modes, single shot and multiple shot. The bolts can easily pierce through iron plates, and the speed of the bolts is as fast as the wind. 2 firing modes? Klein looked at the runic crossbow and discovered that there was a small button on the handle. His thumb could reach it. He pressed it, and a crisp sound could be heard. Klein inserted all 5 crossbow bolts. He aimed them at the earth wall and pulled the trigger. There was no movement. System notification. Additional soul required. As expected, Klein finally understood. As long as it was a runic device, fuel was essential. He thought for a moment before saying, "It would be great if I could add wood." The water condenser can be activated with wood. Klein had 2 souls. One was a yellow sand octopus soul, and the other was a single-horned sandhound. Add a soul. As soon as Klein said that, a ball of light entered the runic crossbow. System notification. Soul 1. The runic crossbow vibrated gently. The complicated patterns on the surface lit up one by one. Perfect runic crossbow. 100, 100. The number represented the number of times it could be fired. A soul could be fired 100 times, and the multiple shot mode counted as 1 shot. Give it a try? Klein drew the runic crossbow with one hand and aimed it at the earth wall again. He pulled the trigger. Shoo! 5 crossbow bolts were fired in unison. They were as fast as the wind, and they disappeared in the blink of an eye. Poof, poof, poof. They all plunged into the earth wall and disappeared without a trace. They're a little fast, but they're powerful enough. Klein quickly approached the earth wall. There were 5 holes on the wall. They weren't arranged in a row, but intersected. I wonder how deep it is. Klein took out his shovel. The number of times he had left to dig a tunnel was none, but didn't mean that he couldn't dig. It was just that no matter how he dug, he was unable to enter the next catacomb. He only used the shovel once and found the crossbow bolt. Klein reloaded the crossbow bolt and returned to its previous position. Shoo! The speed of a single crossbow bolt was even faster, at least 3 times faster than before. Klein dug again. The first time, he didn't manage to dig it out. The second time, he managed to dig it out. Its power was more than doubled. Let's try again. Klein needed to be familiar with the runic crossbow. From its power, to its range, trajectory, and the feeling of shooting. As for the number of times he could fire a crossbow, he could completely afford it. 100 shots were enough for him to save dozens of times. Furthermore, he had another soul. With the runic crossbow and little fox, it wasn't difficult to kill a crypt creature. Poof, poof, poof. He shot again and again, digging again and again. Klein had a methodical way of training. After every shot, he would either adjust his posture slightly or stop to think for a few seconds. With constant adjustments, his proficiency increased. After firing more than 40 times in a row, Klein could shoot instantly. Without aiming, there was a 70 to 80% chance of hitting the target. Apart from that, he could also quickly reload and simulate shooting. Klein could already quickly reload a crossbow bolt and finish shooting in a second. If he were to encounter an emergency, this move could save his life. Klein thought for a moment before saying, "If I apply poison or anesthetic on the crossbow bolts, I'll gain an additional boost in battle." Klein muttered to himself. The runic crossbow's remaining firing times were 55. Klein forged 2 more sets of crossbow bolts, using a total of 4 iron blocks. With the crossbow bolts, I'll pick a cave with crypt creatures tomorrow. Klein put away the runic crossbow and looked at the mud wall on his left. During the day, the left side of the wall had a notification. Dig to the left. There are 2 copper treasure chests and rich resources. Unfortunately, there are 2 rock armor crocodiles guarding them. Although they move slowly, they have a hard outer skin. The fox can't break through the defense, and you, a weakling, can't do anything about it. Dig to the left. There are 2 copper treasure chests and rich resources. Unfortunately, there are 2 rock armor crocodiles guarding them. Although they move slowly, they have a hard outer skin. It's best if an arrow hits their head. Otherwise, you'll suffer. If there were no runes, Klein planned on digging left. There were resources and crypt creatures in the catacombs there. Little Fox could deal with 1. 2 of them. Their movements are slow. As long as I make a plan, it won't be difficult to destroy them one by one. Klein already had a plan in mind. Tomorrow, he would have Little Fox stall one while he dealt with the other. Chapter 22. Kill with a single blow. It was late at night. Klein opened his sleeping bag. He could only sleep on the ground last night, but he already had a sleeping bag today. Furthermore, the entire runic base wasn't as cold as it was last night. The water condenser was in operation. It was suspended in the middle of the wooden bucket. If the water was full tonight, it would drip into the wooden bucket. Both sides of the water condenser had a structure similar to a pot handle. It was just right to use a wooden stick to pass through and place the instrument in the middle of the wooden bucket. Sleep. Klein yawned and entered his sleeping bag. He adjusted his posture. At this moment, a white figure quickly entered. Little Fox rubbed its head wildly. It seemed to be saying that she wanted to sleep in here at night too. It's too crowded. Klein grabbed the back of her neck and threw the little thing outside. Sob, sob, sob. Little Fox sat upright and whimpered in grievance. All right, come in as well. It happens to be cold at night. You can be my thermos. Klein smiled helplessly. Little Fox quickly crawled into Klein's arms. Don't move. Sleep well. There's still a mission tomorrow. Klein patted Little Fox's head. Little Fox lay down quietly. It's indeed a little warm. Klein closed his eyes and gradually fell asleep. It was daybreak. Klein woke up naturally. The second night in the catacombs was much more comfortable than the first night. With a sleeping bag, it was warm enough in the base. After a while, he said, Little Fox, get up and stop pressing down on my chest. I thought it was a ghost pressing down on me. Klein yawned and took the little fox away. Little Fox cried out aggrievedly and yawned as well. Its 2 furry white tails moved back and forth, and its eyes were sleepy. Wash up first. Klein went to check the water bucket. After a night of accumulation, the water was about a quarter of its original height. The water condenser was already full. Klein played with the water and didn't pour it into the wooden bucket. He dug out some water to wash his mouth and face. The grill was turned on, and the pot was placed on top to boil water to drink. A leisurely morning had begun. Probably no other player in the subterranean world could enjoy it as much as Klein. It was already an extravagant wish for others to have a mouthful of water to drink, but he could use it to brush his teeth and wash his face. No one would believe him even if he told them. Little Fox, like Klein, rinsed her mouth before using her claws to soak her face in water and comb her snow-white fur. Let's take a look at the situation of the meat field. Klein came to a corner. He had continuously watered the meat field the day before, and after a night, it had already grown by a large circle. Klein thought for a moment before saying, Good Lord, with this growth rate, I should be able to produce at least 10 caddies a day. I wonder if I'll be able to grow a little more? I'll eat it this morning to see how it tastes. Klein took out a dagger and cut a piece of meat from the sky. A piece of meat landed in his hand. The meat field squirmed slightly and smoothed out the cut area. System notification. Excellent single-horned sandhound meat +1. Excellent single-horned sandhound meat, specially modified. Tender meat, good taste, and rich in nutrients. Currently, it has a 5-star satiety index. Overall score: 70. Klein was taken aback. After being modified by a xenogenic quality has appeared? Be it lizard meat or octopus meat, there were no prefixes. After a night, my physique has strengthened quite a bit. My satiety index is actually 5 stars. Klein cut off a piece and prepared to make a meat soup later. The satiation index would change according to each person's physique. Yesterday's octopus meat's satiation index was 3 stars. Today, it had dropped to 2.5 stars. I poured about 500 milliliters of water yesterday. The new meat from the meat field can probably cut out 10 units of fresh meat. I'll try pouring 10,000 milliliters of water today. Klein made a simple calculation in his mind. One by one, the meat grew out, excluding the basic meat field. Breakfast was hot stewed meat. As Klein ate, he put it up for sale in the trading market. A few hundred milliliters of water was exchanged for a batch of plant ingredients. Then, he put up another piece of lizard meat that didn't taste very good. The main purpose was to exchange runes. The message was that there were still good things that could be traded privately. Almost as soon as the water went up, it was immediately sold out. Klein received the production materials and made another set of anesthetics. Before he went to the next catacomb, he had to apply anesthetics on the bolts to increase the safety. After the meal, he digested the food for half an hour. Everything was ready. He dug open the layer of soil on the left. "Little Fox, are you ready?" Klein asked with a smile. "N. Little Fox raised her claws. "All right, you'll attract an enemy later." Klein machete in his left hand and crossbow bolts in his right hand as he stepped into the black hole. Whoosh! A man and a beast arrived at the 16th catacombs. A fishy smell assaulted his nostrils. Klein's gaze swept past the 2 boxes in the corner and the various materials on the ground. 2 black shadows pounced over. Klein and Little Fox were already on alert, so they separated from each other. Little Fox's claws didn't create any blood on the black shadow's body. Only 4 scratches appeared. The rock armor crocodile looked at the man and beast contemptuously as it opened its bloody mouth. Little Fox flashed past, and the rock armor crocodile missed its bite. The master had instructed them to lure one away. Little Fox deliberately slowed down. As expected, the rock armor crocodile was tricked. Every time it felt like it was about to catch up, the distance would always be pulled apart, causing it to roar in anger. On the other side, Klein was faster than the rock armor crocodile as well, pulling 7 to 8 meters apart. Suddenly, he turned around and aimed the runic crossbow at the rock armor crocodile. A cold light flashed. A hole appeared on the rock armor crocodile's head. It let out a sorrowful cry and crashed to the ground. Chapter 23. Open 2 treasure chests and meet a player. A fatal blow. Klein grinned, revealing 2 rows of bright teeth. He never expected that the first time he aimed at the goods, he would hit a fatal spot. As expected, do I have a shooting talent? System notification. Soul +2. 2 souls obtained in one go. Klein was stunned. Before this, when he killed a crypt creature it would only have 1 soul. His gaze was directed at the remaining rock armor crocodile. It was being played around by Little Fox. It couldn't catch up, and Little Fox was constantly loitering in front of it. It stopped and waited for it to catch up. Little Fox also tried to attack. She only left a few bloody marks on its body, and its defense was too astonishing. "Little Fox, get out of the way," Klein shouted. Little Fox understood and increased its speed. It threw the rock armor crocodile far away in 2 or 3 tries. The rock armor crocodile was incapacitated and enraged as it shifted its target to Klein. As for the death of its companion, it hadn't noticed it. It thought that its companion wouldn't be able to catch up, so it planned on pincer attacking the enemy. Klein raised the runic crossbow again. He calculated the speed of the rock armor crocodile in his mind. He predicted its position in advance. Shoo! The arrow brushed past the rock armor crocodile, but it missed. Klein's eyelids twitched. His heart couldn't help but beat faster when he faced the 2-meter-long crocodile that looked like a beast. Calm down. Klein had experienced 2 small battles, so he took his time and aimed once again to predict his positioning. Shoot! The arrow produced sparks as it pierced through the rock armor crocodile's head. The rock armor crocodile rolled forward and fell at Klein's feet. System notification. Soul +2. Phew. Done. Klein collected the 2 rock armor crocodile corpses before dissecting them. System notification. Rock armor crocodile meat +1-2. System notification. Rock armor crocodile tooth tip +6. System notification. Rock armor crocodile blood +1,200 milliliters. System notification. Rock armor crocodile skin +2. Just the meat on their bodies was already a great harvest. Klein checked the crocodile blood first according to the usual practice. Rock armor crocodile blood, cold blood. It can be used to temper close combat weapons. There is a certain chance to improve the quality of the weapon. Although it didn't meet the expectations, it could be used to refine and discard. It was barely acceptable. Klein had already tasted the benefits of blood medicine, so he hoped that the crocodile blood would also have the effect of strengthening his physique. Then, he checked the crocodile meat. Rock armor crocodile meat. It tastes average. If taken frequently, it can strengthen one's resistance to blows. It must be cooked at high temperatures. Otherwise, in the fishy smell, the current consumption of it has a satiation index of 3 stars. Overall score, 72. It can strengthen one's defense? Klein's eyes lit up. It can strengthen one's defense. It's good stuff. Klein happily accepted it. Opened the treasure chest. Klein strode towards one of the copper treasure chests. He checked it, and there was no harm. System notification. Copper treasure chest +1. Excellent toilet paper blueprint +1. Perfect clothing blueprint +1. Cloth +4. Cotton thread +10. The first treasure chest had 2 lifestyle blueprints. There were also new materials, cloth, and cotton thread. With just these few items, this excavation was already worth it. Klein opened the second copper treasure chest. System notification. Copper treasure chest +1. System notification. Excellent towel +1. Ordinary toothbrush crafting blueprint +1. Ponytail hair +4. Iron block +4. Another lifestyle crafting blueprint appeared, a new material. The copper treasure chest was completely disintegrated, and the copper block he gained was 8. He learned all 3 crafting blueprints. He kept the remaining items. He opened the crafting list and looked at the synthesis formula for the new items. Excellent toilet paper 30 sheets. Wood 9/1. Water 2,800 meters, 200 milliliters. Perfect clothing. Cloth 4/3, animal skin 3/1, cotton thread 10/6. The skin of crypt creatures could be collectively referred to as animal skin. Ordinary toothbrush crafting blueprint. Wood 9/1, ponytail hair 4/1. Klein paid the most attention to the toilet paper. After all, he had just used the parchment map yesterday. It wasn't comfortable at all. The toilet paper came just in time. He couldn't use it for the time being. There was no need to immediately produce it. Klein began to plunder the resources on the ground. Wood +18, iron +20, stone +18, copper +16. There should be nothing left. Klein stopped. Just as he was about to use the rock armor crocodile blood to refine his machete, the earth wall on his left rippled. Cain, Little Fox, was the first to notice the commotion and shrieked. Klein looked up and narrowed his eyes. 2 figures passed through the complete earth wall and arrived at the local catacomb. It was a young man and a middle-aged man. The 2 of them held short spears and knives in their hands. They were originally smiling, but when they saw Klein, their smiles froze. Klein. The 2 of them had seen Klein's face in person on the World Channel, and they recognized the celebrity at a glance. "What should we do?" the youth whispered. The 2 of them knew that the catacombs contained rich resources, but it seemed like Klein had arrived before them. The middle-aged man narrowed his eyes and sized up Klein. Seeing that he had nothing in his hands and that there was a weak and cute white fox sitting by his feet, he couldn't help but think of something. The 2 of them had met in another catacomb. They had been digging together since yesterday afternoon. "Klein?" the middle-aged man asked tentatively. "Whichever direction you want to dig in, please feel free." Klein didn't plan on making things difficult for the 2 of them. Unless the 2 of them made things difficult for him. The middle-aged man said, "My name is Jack, and he's Tom." The middle-aged man said, "We would like to invite you to join the team. We would like to excavate together and share resources so that we can survive in the catacombs world." In order to increase his persuasiveness, Jack said in a deep voice, "Tom and I dug up a subterranean creature yesterday, and we killed it together. If we had your materials, the strength of the team would be even stronger." The key was that Klein seemed to have an endless supply of meat and water. If he could team up with Klein, the problem of food and water could be solved. Chapter 24. Reject the invitation. It wasn't surprising for Klein to encounter players in this catacomb. There were billions of people in the world. Even if a portion of them had been eliminated, it was still a huge number. The number of people in the Fishing Zone's channel was originally 1,000, but now, there were more than 700 people left. They gradually stood firm in the catacombs. After more than a dozen excavations, Klein was already far away from his starting point. It was definitely the same for the other players in the region. As long as the catacombs were connected to each other, there was always a chance of meeting each other. Klein wasn't interested in meeting the two players. He was more interested in the period of time before they entered the catacomb. The wall was intact, and just as he had guessed, the sound was completely isolated. When the two of them entered the catacomb, they didn't appear with their feet or hands first. Instead, their complete bodies appeared at the same time. In other words, the moment they stepped into the black hole, it was a bit like space-time teleportation. Perhaps the black hole wasn't thin, but when players stepped into it, they would have an illusion. "I have no interest in joining your team." Klein directly rejected Jack's suggestion. Joining the team was fine, but the prerequisite was that the other party had something that Klein wanted. The two of them were covered in dust. They only had a short knife and a short hair on their weapons, and they weren't any better off. Furthermore, Klein could see the hint and avoid any risks. There was no need for him to repeat his words and let others take advantage of him for no reason. "Not joining?" Tracking Jack's gaze, Tom said, "Isn't it better for everyone to practice and survive in the catacombs? As the saying goes, 2 fists can't block 4 hands. You should understand this principle." As he spoke, he intentionally or unintentionally made use of the short knife in his hand. It looked like he was trying to dissuade him, but in fact, he was full of threats. 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. Wasn't it just Klein alone against the two of them? As for the little fox, Jack didn't take it to heart. What kind of evil intentions could a cute little fox have? It might be Klein's reserve rations. When the two of them entered the catacombs, they didn't see the rock armor crocodile's corpse. Otherwise, they would definitely leave obediently. "What can you two men provide me? Let me be clear in advance that my sexual orientation is fine." Klein chuckled. "I don't need to rely on others to survive in the catacombs. Please feel free to leave." Jack's arm touched his companion Tom without leaving a trace. The two of them exchanged glances. Tom immediately understood Jack's thoughts. After hesitating for a moment, he nodded slightly. He agreed with Jack's idea. Seize the material goods. Klein was too famous. Everyone knew that he was a big piece of meat. If Klein joined, everything would be fine. If he didn't join, then don't blame them for being ruthless. If he wanted to live longer, he had to be ruthless. He had to take a gamble. "Klein, hand over half common goods you have, and we can let you go." Jack and Tom held their weapons and approached step by step. The two of them bet that Klein would admit defeat. Handing over half was equivalent to giving Klein a chance to live, so Klein wouldn't be desperate. "Only half?" Klein said in surprise. "Yes, as long as you are willing to cooperate honestly, we will only take half." Jack thought that Klein had agreed, and he was overjoyed. As expected, he had made the right bet. Klein shook his head and said, "I just feel that you guys aren't ruthless enough." "What a pity." "What's a pity?" Jack felt a chill. Klein shook his head and said, "Aren't you guys a little slow-witted? Do you really think that I relied on luck to gather so many resources?" Klein grabbed with his hand, and the runic crossbow appeared in his hand. The two people opposite him saw the runic crossbow. No player had long-range weapons. They were all melee weapons. As a result, the two of them didn't think too much about it. In close combat, there was definitely an advantage in numbers. Klein didn't look tall or strong. "Ahem, boss, we were just joking just now. Don't be rash." Tom's mind was sharp as he hurriedly said something nice. "Shoo." A crossbow arrow pierced through Jack's chest, bringing with it a flower of blood. Jack widened his eyes as his body fell backward. "Boss, spare me." Tom was frightened and hurriedly knelt down. After all, he wasn't a warrior who had been through hundreds of battles. He was instantly scared and didn't rush forward with his short spear. Sorry, I don't like to joke around. The moment he said that, another arrow flew out. Tom was so frightened that he wet his pants as he slumped to the ground. The arrow had brushed past his cheek. Sorry, I missed. Klein smiled awkwardly. An arrow appeared in his hand and was quickly loaded. Without waiting for Tom's reaction, another arrow was fired. This time, it hit him right in the forehead. Both of them died. Unfortunately, there are no souls. Klein now understood that not all creatures had souls. The two corpses could be stored in space and disintegrated. However, Klein wasn't interested in this. He hadn't reduced his standards to the point of eating human flesh. A short hair, a short knife, and 2 runic bases. How do I take out the things in the runic base? Klein picked up his weapon and took out 2 runic base metal balls. System notification. Ordinary spear +1. System notification. Ordinary short knife +1. System notification. Ownerless runic base +2. System notification. Ownerless runic base detected. Do you wish to absorb it? I can absorb it? Klein took out his runic base and said, absorb it all. The 2 ownerless runic bases transformed into streams of light and entered Klein's runic base. Buzz. The runic base took a light frame. The number of runes on the surface increased. System notification. Absorption successful. System notification. Iron block +18. System notification. Wood +22. System notification. Copper block +16. System notification. Map, medium, +1. System notification. Incomplete crypt biology guide, damaged, +1. System notifications popped up one after another. It was small harvest. Chapter 25. Changes to the base. There were more than a dozen items in total. Beef jerky, bread, and pure milk. They also obtained a batch of materials. Not mentioning copper and iron, there were also some plant materials and seeds. Of all the items, the crypt biology guide and medium-sized map were the most eye-catching. The 2 of them obtained a medium-sized map, so they judged that the place was rich in resources. Who would have thought that due to a series of mistakes in their decision-making, they would die here, letting Klein off the hook for nothing? Klein thought for a moment before saying, if I receive so many resources at once, won't the runic base's capacity be full? Runic base, open. As Klein opened the base, he looked at the upper right corner of the interface. The icon for the small house was still green. It meant that the space was far from full. Whoosh! The runic base expanded. Klein was astonished to find that the entire base had expanded greatly. It was originally about 3 meters in length, but now it had expanded to 5 meters in length. The overall decoration had improved, with some additional details. Klein went outside the base to check. The tile surface was still a monotonous small bungalow. It's already pretty good that the area has increased. Klein couldn't help but think, if I encounter players in the future, should I fish more? His principle was not to casually kill people. However, if someone made a move first, he would definitely retaliate. It was quite normal to accidentally kill someone. Fishing for law enforcement was definitely not a bad idea. He thought for a moment before saying, first, check the crypt biology illustration manual. Klein flipped his hand and a pamphlet appeared. Incomplete crypt biology illustration manual, damaged. It can only be used after it is repaired. There is a portion of the information on the coke oven. Klein thought for a moment and silently recited, repair manual. This was important information that could deepen his understanding of the subterranean world. He now had 5 souls and a runic crossbow, so it wasn't difficult for him to obtain souls. There was no need to save. System notification. Soul 1. System notification. The incomplete crypt biology illustration manual has been successfully repaired. System notification. Do you wish to learn the incomplete crypt biology illustration manual? 3 consecutive system notifications. It was about the same as the blueprint. After learning it, it would be loaded into the system interface. Klein chose to learn. A beam of light fused into his body. He then opened the system interface. As expected, behind the pet button, one word appeared. Guide. Klein opened it. A dense list appeared. Green scorpion, poisonous bat, rainbow snake, brain eater, kobold. Details. Kobold. Governs walking crypt creatures, is good at digging holes and creating traps. Worships evil dragons. Moves in groups, never fights alone. Likes to collect treasures everywhere. Ability. Uses weapons. Weakness. Weak body. Danger factor. 42. Apart from the description, there were also 3D images of the crypt creatures. He could adjust the angle to view it. I wonder if there's any information about the tail fox? Klein looked at the obedient little fox by his feet. A box popped up on the interface. Tail fox. A gentle crypt creature. It has 2 tails at birth. As its bloodline grows stronger, the number of tails will increase until it has 9 tails. Ability. High-speed movement. Weakness. Insufficient defense. Danger factor. 22. There is no need to take the initiative to search for it. It will automatically pop up. It's very convenient, but the danger factor of a tail fox is only 22. Although Klein was unwilling to admit it, the lethality of a tail fox was indeed limited. It was more of a strategic use. Its movement speed was fast, and with its high-speed movement skill, the fox had already fooled most of the crypt creatures. Klein looked up a few more crypt creatures he had encountered. Yellow sand octopus danger factor, 13. Rock armor crocodile, 25. Single horned sand hound, 20. He didn't have any information when he fought them. If the title of the movie was based on the danger factor, the life chart's score would still be accurate. Of course, he couldn't directly use the danger factor to determine the strength of the crypt creatures. For example, Klein could use the runic crossbow to kill 2 rock armor crocodiles. If he encountered a tail fox, it would be very difficult to hit it. He might even be killed instead. There was definitely a theory of restraint among crypt creatures. There were more than 1,000 types of crypt creatures in the entire catacombs. Klein briefly browsed through them, closed the interface, and took out the medium-sized map he had just obtained. It was similar to the structure of a small map. There were also red dots indicating the location, and every catacomb had notes. The small map was centered around the red dot catacomb, extending out to 2 catacombs. The medium-sized map had 5 catacombs. Klein compared the resources of the previous catacomb and looked in 3 directions according to the hints. He could already determine the location. Here, the 2 of them have already dug to the 2nd catacombs according to the map. Klein took out his dagger and marked it on the map. From his position, according to the mark on the map, he could plan the next 3 excavations. Klein entered from the left catacomb and eliminated 1 option. Out of the remaining 4 directions, the 2 of them had just arrived from the catacomb ahead, so they could eliminate another option. The remaining 3 directions, Klein pointed at the catacombs above the map. Chapter 26. Roasting spiders for planting pots. From the moment he arrived in the catacombs world, he had never excavated upwards. Today would be the first time. The map indicated that the catacomb above was dangerous and had resources. If he chose the 17th catacomb above, then the 18th catacomb would be able to dig up an iron treasure chest, and the 19th catacomb would be a silver treasure chest. A silver treasure chest that was even more advanced than an iron treasure chest. To be able to obtain a perfect runic crossbow from an iron treasure chest yesterday, the items in the silver treasure chest would definitely be even more impressive. Jack and Tom would definitely not dare to choose this route. It was fraught with danger. But Klein could give it a try. Especially with the help of Little Fox, he could let Little Fox lure the enemy away first. Klein looked up at the earthen wall above him. There's a dog spider in the catacomb above. If you have a source of fire, you can easily burn the spider silk to avoid being tied up into a mummy and harvest some resources. Klein flipped through the illustrated list and searched for the dog spider. Danger factor, 26. It was non-toxic, and the spider web was resilient. It was unbreakable with a knife. Its weakness was that it was afraid of flames, so the spider silk would catch fire easily. Without the protection of the silk nest, its strength would be greatly reduced. Klein thought for a moment before saying, "I'll choose to dig upwards. I can." Little Fox bring the source of fire up first. Klein put away the map and first opened the runic base. He could first climb to the top of the runic base to dig. The runic base was 6 meters tall. The ceiling of the catacomb was about 7 meters above the ground. "I'll dig a tunnel first." Klein piled up the sand beside the runic base. He continued to build up. He used the sand to climb to the roof of the runic base. Little Fox came up with him. Klein half squatted and held the shovel with both hands. I'll start digging in an uncomfortable position. Digging upwards bit by bit. Klein had already entered the tunnel, and he walked using the runic base. Every time he lowered the shovel, the sand would be taken away. The difficulty of digging was greatly reduced. He dug 15 meters upwards and dug through. Klein placed his 2 feet on both sides of the tunnel and took out half a parchment. Little Fox, take the fire source and go up later. Be careful of the big spiders on it. If you see a spider web, light it with fire. Klein curled up half of the parchment into a roll. The parchment was a small map that was never used. Bite it. He stuffed one end of the parchment into Little Fox's mouth. Little Fox, who was squatting on Klein's shoulder, obediently held it in her mouth. Klein took out a flint and a dagger. He rubbed it lightly. The sparks lit up the parchment. It was like lighting a cigarette. The fox also took a puff and puffed out her cheeks. Go up, Klein gestured. Little Fox exhaled a puff of white smoke and jumped gently into the black membrane. Klein used both his hands and feet to reach into the black membrane. With a strong push, his body became lighter than usual. He jumped out of the tunnel. The 17th catacomb. As far as the eye could see, there were fires everywhere. With half a parchment in her mouth, the fox ran about, lighting fires. The web caught fire, like a fuse, and quickly spread. Spider webs crisscrossed the catacomb. On the wall, with a head of a dog and a spider body, the dog spider continuously spit silk, wanting to stop Little Fox. Little Fox was dexterous, dodging easily, and igniting the webs. Klein took out the runic crossbow and found a good position to aim at the dog spider. The back of this fellow looked like a dog's head. It had short brown fur all over its body. Switch to multi-shot mode. Klein pressed his thumb lightly. Multi-shot mode activated. He pulled the trigger. Fire. The dog spider focused on dealing with Little Fox. Only when the arrow was almost in front of it did it sense danger. It jumped to the side. Peefed. The bolt pierced through the dog spider's fragile body. Under the multiple shot mode, the 5 arrows were concentrated, making it easy to hit. The dog spider slid down the wall. It only struggled on the ground for a moment before it stopped moving. System notification. Soul +1. Little Fox, come back, Klein shouted. There were too many spider webs in the catacomb, and half of the catacomb was on fire. Little Fox nimbly returned to Klein's side. Klein brought Little Fox to another side of the catacomb and hid in the runic base. Although the fire wouldn't burn the 2 of them to death, the runic base could withstand the high temperature. Otherwise, the beautiful fur of Little Fox might be charred. A few minutes later, Klein walked out of the runic base. The air reeked of roasted meat. The dog spider was already burning. Klein went over to pick up the dog spider's corpse. System notification. Roasted dog spider meat +1. Roasted dog spider meat. Fragrant dog spider meat. It has average nutrition, tastes sour, and is succulent. Current consumption of it has a satiation index of 3 stars. Overall score. 60. It couldn't be further decomposed. Succulent. Klein thought of the dog spider type and felt a chill run down his spine. If he were to eat it, it would probably explode. Klein was unwilling to eat it. Do you want to eat it? He lowered his head to look at the fox. The fox shook its head repeatedly and took a step back in disgust. All right, I can only hang it up for sale. Klein opened the trading channel and traded while it was still hot. I'll just exchange it for some blueprints. His gaze swept across the trading market. He filtered the blueprints. Below him were all blueprints. Some needed to be changed for water, while others needed to be changed for bread and meat. This blueprint isn't bad. I'm still familiar with it. Klein smiled. Rogers 178.23. Item. Exquisite runic pot blueprint. Requirement. Any meat, at least 1,500 grams, plus 300 milliliters water. Inventory. -1. Message from the seller. Bosses, come and pet me. The price wasn't cheap, but it was within Klein's acceptable range. The dog spider in his hands had exceeded 1,000 grams. Adding a random piece of lizard meat would be just enough. Water wasn't a problem either. There was a pile. Chapter 27. Boss, doesn't your conscience hurt? Excellent runic pot blueprint. It's a daily runic device. By adding soil into it, seeds can be planted. There's no need for fertilizer, and plants can grow quickly. Klein learned the blueprint and opened the synthesis list to quickly take a look. There were 4 main materials: iron, stone, copper, and earth runes. One of the earth runes was required, and the conditions were just right. Klein hesitated for a moment and didn't choose to produce it. At the moment, the seeds he had on hand were the fluorescent grass and cold play grass. He had obtained them from his previous collection of fluorescent grass, as well as the stock of Jack and Tom. However, regardless of whether it was the fluorescent grass or cold play grass, they could be easily exchanged on the market. Money was about to arrive. If he used 1 earth rune to plant 2 types of grass, the cost-benefit ratio would be too low. Black vine seeds were more or less the same. At the very least, they could produce sweet and sour fruits. However, there were no black vine seeds on the market. Klein thought for a moment and said, "I'll leave them for now. If I find fruit seeds in the future, I'll make them. At the very least, they have to be vegetables. I'll open the copper treasure chest first." Klein walked to the corner. Under the fire, the copper treasure chest was only blackened. There wasn't much of a problem overall. The inspection was flawless. System notification. Copper treasure chest +1. System notification. Wind runes +2. System notification. Soap +1. I'm pretty lucky. I actually got 2 wind runes. The soap isn't bad either. It can improve the quality of life. Klein happily put it away. He didn't decompose the copper treasure chest. There were quite a few small items now, and they could be placed in a chest. There was no shortage of copper resources anyway. After dealing with the treasure chest, he continued to plunder the ground. There were plants in the original catacomb, but they were burned clean. Even the wooden blocks weren't completely preserved. They were turned into charcoal. Iron +2, stone +4, charcoal +6. 5 more crossbow bolts were collected. The next catacombs are on the right. Klein took out a medium-sized map. The map indicated that there was a dangerous crypt creature in the catacomb on the right. Klein focused his gaze and a golden prompt appeared. "Congratulations. There was an iron treasure chest in the catacombs on the right. A few hours ago, the foolish crypt creature choked itself to death." Klein was dumbfounded. Choked to death? All right, it was just as well that there was no danger. Klein picked up the shovel and dug to the right. His speed was extremely fast. After a while, Klein arrived at the 18th catacomb. This catacomb wasn't boxy, but a zigzag. Klein took out his machete. After circling half a circle, he saw a huge corpse lying on the ground. A huge snake. Its body was green with patterns. It was 5 meters long and as thick as an arm. There was a faint stench of decay in the air. Its throat was bulging, and it was unknown what it had swallowed. Floret snake. Violent, likes a cool environment and loiters in the subterranean caves. Likes eating sand, and its corpse will quickly decompose after death. Ability. Binding. Weakness. Not very smart. Danger factor. 24. Klein read the illustrated description and immediately guessed at a possibility. Probably choked on the dirt. No wonder it was judged to be stupid, Klein said. He went to the front of the snake and looked through its open mouth. It really is. A lump of earth was big enough and hard enough. The snake ate the whole thing. Then, he dissected it. The snake was dissected into 10 pieces of meat, 400 milliliters of blood, and 1 piece of skin. The blood and flesh were not fresh. After the snake died, its corpse would quickly decompose. After an hour, the blood and flesh would have a faintly fishy smell. However, according to the description, it was edible. The blood of the snake was harmless and had no effect. The description of the meat was that it tasted bad but could satisfy hunger. Its nutritional value was also extremely low. Because it wasn't fresh, there was a chance of a stomachache after eating it. I'll throw it into the trading market. With the principle of not wasting it, Klein opened the trading market once again. Once again, he saw Rogers put up a sale. This time, he put it up a fire rune for sale. It required an internal mass of more than 1,000 grams. For the flesh of the floret snake, 300 grams per unit was more than enough. Since there's a risk involved, I'll give you 2 more pieces. Klein chose to trade 5 pieces of floret snake meat. He successfully obtained the fire rune. Klein casually glanced at it and used the remaining dog spider meat to exchange for a blueprint of an ordinary leather glove and an exquisite blanket. The rest, no one on the market collected beast blood. They only collected water. I can only put it up and sell it. As Klein was thinking, a private message box popped up. There were three main types of private messages that popped up on their own. The first type had a keyword set. The second type was that both parties had just spoken to each other and had replied to each other's messages. The third type was that both sides had conducted transactions, making it easier for buyers and sellers to communicate. Rogers 178.23, Boss, you just traded me a roasted spider. The taste was so sour and it was exploding in my mouth. Now, you gave me a snake that might cause stomach pain. Could you blame him? This guy was the one who had put it up for transaction. And there was only a chance that the snake would give you a stomachache. Maybe you'll get lucky? Chapter 28. Get the propeller. Klein 182.56, my conscience won't hurt. Rogers 178.23. Klein 182.56. Isn't this a premium exchange? I'll give you 5 pieces of snake meat. Do you want a temporary pain, or do you want to starve to death? Rogers 178.23. This. But, that meat doesn't smell good. Klein 182.56. Even at this stage, do you still think it tastes bad? Do you believe that after starving you for 5 days or 7 days, you will still be willing to eat a piece of shit in front of you? Rogers 178.23. Klein 182.56. How about this? I still have 400 milliliters of beast blood here as a supplement. You should know the importance of water resources. Blood can also replenish water and has a certain amount of nutrients. Rogers 178.23 said, all right, thank you, boss. A moment later, Klein traded 400 milliliters of snake blood to Rogers. Rogers 178.23 said, QAQ. It seemed like he wanted to express that the smell was still bad. Klein stopped chatting with Rogers. The other 2 buyers who received the snake meat didn't complain. This was because Klein was trading at a premium. An extra piece of meat could last for a few days. A stomachache was small price to pay. It wasn't diarrhea. Klein found an iron treasure chest on the other side of the subterranean gallery. After checking it, he opened it. System notification. Iron treasure chest +1. System notification. Perfect floating propeller blueprint +1. System notification. Earth rune +1. System notification. Fire rune +1. First, he disassembled the iron treasure chest. He kept the earth rune and fire rune. Klein only had a blueprint left in his hands. Another perfect blueprint dropped. If nothing went wrong, it would be another runic device. Perfect floating propeller blueprint. A daily, combat runic device that hangs behind you like a backpack. It's portable and can shoot out powerful winds, allowing the user to float in the air. A flying backpack instantly appeared in Klein's mind. This thing could be good or bad. It depended on the flying speed and the dexterity in the air. If he flew slowly after floating, he would only become a living target. If he was agile enough and equipped with a runic crossbow, he wouldn't be able to fly kites slowly if he encountered flying creatures or long-range attacks. Learn. Klein's hand lightened, and the blueprint turned into a beam of light. He opened the production list. He found the synthesis formula. Perfect floating propeller. Wind rune 2 halves, copper 42 twelfths, iron 45 twelfths, silver 0 halves. He happened to find 2 wind runes in the previous catacombs. However, he was lacking silver. If the crypt creatures in the next catacombs can be solved, then according to convention, the silver treasure chest could be broken down into 4 silver pieces, and the materials would be gathered. Klein's gaze landed in front of him. According to the map, the catacomb in front of him was his final destination. There's an attractive silver treasure chest in the catacombs ahead. There's a pair of carrion jackals waiting for you. If you're willing to sacrifice your pet, you can give it a try and patiently wait for the opportunity to come. The hint wasn't optimistic. Klein's expression was solemn as he looked at Little Fox. Although they hadn't known each other for long, they already had some feelings for each other. Sacrificing Little Fox? That was definitely impossible. He opened the illustrated page. Search. Carrion jackal. Klein could only gather information before slowly choosing a countermeasure. The search result appeared, carrion jackal. Fast and very flexible. More than 70% of its body has been decomposed. It won't feel any pain even if one uses a knife to slash at the decomposed area. The decomposed area caused it to lose its sense of smell. Its hearing is weak, and its eyeballs have mutated. In the dark environment, all of its vision is lost. Ability. Mental roar. Weakness. Night vision ability is 0. Danger factor. 28. Check the details of the ability. Mental roar. Through a unique pronunciation method, it causes a mental shock to the surrounding creatures. There is a chance to cause the target to temporarily lose focus. Cooldown time. 60 minutes. After Klein browsed through the information in the illustrated handbook, he regained hope. No wonder I have to wait. The reason is here. The movement speed is fast, so it's indeed difficult for me to hit it. And the advantage of Little Fox lies in its speed. If I'm honest, I can't take advantage of it. It's very unlikely that I'll be able to survive against 2 more powerful crypt creatures. Klein sighed. He had to wait until tonight before he could take action. Because he had consumed lizard blood, Klein's night vision had already been enhanced last night. It would definitely be enhanced by today. It was impossible to make night as bright as day, but it wasn't to the point of being blind. Last night, under the dark environment, his range of vision could reach 10 meters. With an increase today, he should be able to increase it by a few meters. 10 meters. If he quietly approached and relied on the runic crossbow, it would be easy to complete a sneak attack. Klein thought for a moment and said, "There's still a long time before it gets dark. Let's wait patiently." Klein rested in his spot. At the same time, he looked in the other 4 directions. Unfortunately, it was indeed as indicated on the map. There was only a silver treasure chest in the catacomb ahead. In the other 4 directions, the best reward only had a bronze treasure chest. It was too different from a silver treasure chest. Chapter 29. Night Raid. There were still more than 10 hours before nightfall. Klein stationed himself there. There were 7 excavations left for today. He didn't know if he could use them all. Normally, the catacombs were 2 different worlds during the day and at night. It was like the wilderness, with many ferocious beasts appearing at night. Perhaps it was the same in the catacombs world. Furthermore, at night, the eye would always have its limits. Even if Klein's night vision had been enhanced, it wouldn't be particularly convenient at night. In fact, with Klein's current conditions, he could completely rest in place for a month. He could only rely on the water condenser and meat field to support himself for a long time. But Klein wasn't satisfied with his current situation. He wanted to improve the quality of his life and constantly increase his strength. Especially after reading through the illustrated handbook, which was incomplete, many powerful crypt creatures had been recorded. It wasn't that they couldn't move. If one day they took the initiative to seek him out, his strength would be weak, and it would be difficult for him to fend them off with Little Fox. Klein didn't stay idle after that. First, he added 40 pieces of wood to the water condenser and continued making water. Then, he watered the meat field. The rest of the time was used to train. Strength training. Push-ups, sit-ups. Knife and spear training. Stabbing, slashing, posture. Runic driving training. Accurate shooting, rapid reloading, multiple shots. When he was tired, he would stop to rest and stroke Little Fox, or he could look at the chat channel and check his private messages. Klein learned more information from the world and regional chat channels. It was mainly about the current situation of the various major players. Most of them had dug up 5 or 6 catacombs, while the best was about to dig their 10th catacombs. They weren't Klein. Every time they dug up a blind box, they would find something. Some fierce players had to stop because they were injured from fighting the crypt creatures. Most of them were only willing to move forward when their food and water ran out. Today, a large portion of the players had already met others. Most of them would choose to form an alliance. There were also a few who chose to plunder resources. There were 3 types. There were successful counterattacks, some who only received resources and didn't kill others, and there were also those who killed and stole treasures. Among them, there were a few who killed and stole treasures. In other words, there were only a few who were known by outsiders. The killer wouldn't take the initiative to speak. Before the victim died, he called for help in the chat channel. When others went to ask, there was already no response. Similar bloody incidents continued to play out in the catacombs. There were already players calling for everyone to work together and not engage in internal strife the next time they met. Only cooperation can increase the chances of survival. Two people have a much higher chance to survive than just one person. It can also relieve loneliness. Cooperation is advocated, not plunder. Killing is against the law. Don't do things that violate the bottom line. And so on. After Klein finished reading, he could only say that this small number of people were too naive. They had actually moved the morals and regulations of a civilized society to the cruel underground world. Most of the people in the chat channel didn't respond. Most of them understood the logic. If there were food and drink, and they could coexist with each other. If there was a lack of food and drink, who would care if they killed or not? After all, no one knew they were killing people here, and there was no need for them to be put on trial. With more players forming teams, will there be more resources on the market, or fewer? Klein was unable to come to a conclusion. Forming teams would make digging safer, and they could take care of each other. It would also make them safer when they faced crypt creatures. The team had to go to a crypt together, and the number of times the team could dig together could not be combined. The maximum number of times a day would still be 10. If they did not form a team, they would not be sharing the same team. The total number of times they could dig could be stacked, but it was more dangerous to go alone. Each had its pros and cons. In the blink of an eye, it was already noon. Lunch was stewed meat. The meat was made from rock-armored crocodiles and one-eyed lizard. In order to make the taste more layered, the juice of the black vine fruit was added to increase the sweet and sour taste. After seasoning, this lunch was the most delicious meal Klein had ever had since he entered the catacombs. Rock-armored crocodile meat could increase one's resistance to blows. Klein wasn't sure if it would work on foxes as well. The sky turned dark. After dinner, Klein made his final preparations. Weapons inspection. He gave the fox some important instructions. He also did some warm-up exercises. At the same time, he would occasionally observe the movements of the next catacomb. Perhaps the carrion jackal would automatically leave. It was completely dark. Klein's night vision had indeed improved once again. In the past, he couldn't even see his own fingers. Now, his visibility was around 15 meters. The night vision of the carrion jackal was close to zero. They had no sense of smell, and their hearing was weak. As long as he was 10 meters away, Klein was confident that the arrow would hit a vital point. At that moment, Klein looked at the catacomb in front of him again. There's an attractive silver treasure chest in the catacomb ahead. There's a pair of carrion jackals waiting for you. Now is a good time to attack. You can easily take care of them. Hint, easily finished. Klein and Little Fox entered the tunnel they had dug beforehand. They arrived in front of the black membrane. Klein looked at Little Fox and said, "Be careful and don't alert the enemy, understand?" Klein wasn't too worried about Little Fox. Before he entered, he instructed once again, "Without my orders, you are not allowed to attack in advance." Woo, woo, woo. Little Fox patted her furry chest as though she was saying, "Don't worry, leave it to me." Klein stepped into the black membrane first. Little Fox followed closely behind. The 19th catacomb. It was silent. Klein observed his surroundings. With his limited vision, he tried his best to find the location of the carrion jackals. Whoosh! Little Fox tugged at Klein's pant leg. Looking over, Little Fox gestured diagonally forward. Its night vision was better than Klein's, so it naturally discovered the enemy ahead of time. Klein nodded slightly and slowly moved in the direction of Little Fox. Every step he took had to be light enough. He walked for a full 2 minutes over a distance of more than 10 meters. Klein stopped in his tracks. He could already see the outline of the two carrion jackals in the darkness. The time for the hunt had begun. Chapter 30. Silver treasure chest found. Base upgrade scroll? The smell from the carrion jackals was strong. On the left and right, two carrion jackals lay together. At night, they lost all sight, no different from a blind man. This was the most dangerous time for carrion jackals. Therefore, carrion jackals usually appeared in pairs. At night, they took turns keeping vigil. Although they couldn't see, they would prick up their ears and try their best to capture the sounds around them. If there was a slight movement, they would immediately wake up their companions. Klein and Little Fox were already 10 meters away. The carrion jackal that was keeping watch still didn't notice. Klein took out the runic crossbow. He loaded the crossbow in advance. There's no mistake in shooting at the head. Klein held his breath and aimed at the head of one of the carrion jackals. If it was during the day, he could guarantee that he would hit every target that moved. At night, his vision wasn't very good, so he needed to aim carefully. He adjusted his posture and pulled the trigger. Crack! In the silent darkness, a crisp sound appeared. The carrion jackal that was on night watch instantly got up. The carrion jackal let out a strange roar. It sounded like a wailing ghost. System notification. Soul +2. At the same time, Klein's body trembled. His vision was blurry, and his brain seemed to have stopped working. About half a second passed before he recovered. Fortunately, it was nighttime, so the carrion jackal couldn't discern the enemy's position at all. After it roared, it slowly retreated. Was its companion dead? It wasn't sure. Gritting its teeth, it let out a low roar, hoping to scare the attacker. Looks like I don't need Little Fox to do anything, Klein thought to himself. Its night vision was really trash. No wonder the notification said that it was easily resolved. There was no danger even if he came alone. Klein took a step forward and closed in again. It was another arrow. Roar. The carrion jackal fell. Another headshot. System notification. Soul +2. When Klein saw the notification, he could confirm that he had nailed the carrion jackal to death. But that was the best part about the system. He didn't need to worry about the crypt creatures faking their deaths. The two carrion jackals only provided Klein with 4 souls. As for the corpses, after decomposition, the blood couldn't be eaten. The bones had already rotted. The entire body was filled with trash. The carrion jackals weren't the main point. Klein lit a bonfire and used the light from the fire to search for the situation inside the catacomb. Here, Klein ran straight for the silver treasure chest in the corner. He picked it up and walked to the side of the full fire. Under the light of the fire, the silver treasure chest reflected a luster. It was made of pure silver. If it was sold outside, it would be worth a lot of money. Come, Little Fox, let's see how your luck is. Klein recalled that outside, someone had opened a chest with the help of a pet and even obtained some good items. They were there to entertain him. Woo, woo, woo? Little Fox looked up at him in confusion. Klein grabbed one of Little Fox's paws and placed it on the treasure chest. Open it together. System notification. Silver treasure chest +1. System notification. Low-level rune base upgrade scroll +1. System notification. Perfect runic speed blade blueprint +1. System notification. Fragrant rice tree seed +2-1. After dissecting the treasure chest, Klein couldn't wait to examine the 3 brand new items. The focus was on the runic base upgrade scroll, as well as the fragrant rice tree seed. Low-level runic base upgrade scroll. Used to upgrade the base to X, 50 iron blocks, 50 copper blocks. Fragrant rice tree seed. When it matures, it will be a small sapling, but you can use it to grow white spring rice. There's a lot of it. Perfect runic speed blade blueprint, the scripture of the nation. When used, it can increase the speed at which it can be modified. Like the wind, it can easily cut through copper and iron. It's a rare close combat weapon. After Klein looked through the details of the upgrade scroll, the corner of his mouth twitched. A weapon. He actually needed so many materials to upgrade. Copper and iron were easy to collect, so he had quite a lot of them on him. He also had 5 souls. Runes were more difficult to deal with. The current number of runes Klein had were as follows. Wind rune 2, Fire rune 4, Earth rune 2, Water rune 0. He was lacking 1 wind, 1 earth, and 3 water. The base was sufficient at the moment, so he could choose not to upgrade. He would first forge the runic speed blade in the floating propeller. Klein reluctantly put away the upgrading scroll. It would be the slowest. Now that he had more water and meat, he wouldn't have to buy them at a high price. He didn't believe that no one would come knocking on his door. Rice tree seeds. It was necessary to create the runic planting pot. Perfect runic speed blade blueprint. Learn. Klein looked down at the blueprint. The next moment, it turned into a beam of light. He chose the manufacturing list and looked at the formula for the runic speed blade. Perfect runic speed blade. Wind rune 2 halves. Iron 45/8. Copper 42/8. Wind runes again. Should he create a floating propeller or a runic speed blade? Chapter 31. Try flying. Both required wind runes. At the moment, he could only forge one. Klein thought for a moment before saying, I have a runic crossbow now. As long as I don't encounter any fast-moving crypt creatures, I don't need to engage in close combat. Compared to my full-range melee abilities, at the current stage, long-range attacks are more suitable for me. At the very least, it can guarantee that I won't be easily injured. Klein thought about it and decided to first create the floating propeller. He would wait until he was more proficient with his knife skills or had gathered enough materials before creating the runic speedblade. Perfect floating propeller. Wind rune 2 halves, copper 42/12, iron 45/12, silver 4 halves. Confirm creation. System notification. Wind rune 2, copper 12, iron 12, silver 2. System notification. The perfect floating propeller has been successfully forged. Klein's hand sank. A backpack-like instrument appeared in his hand. As usual, there were many complicated patterns on the surface. The main materials were copper and iron. This meant that the internal parts were silver. The entire instrument was not as bloated as expected. It was less than a foot in length horizontally, half a foot in length lengthwise, and 3 inches in thickness. There were 2 jet tubes on the right. System notification. Additional soul required. Klein pursed his lips. As expected, he needed another soul as an energy source. After adding 1 soul, he checked the details of the item again. Perfect floating propeller. 30/30ths of a minute. 1 soul could fly for 30 minutes. I wonder what the flying effect will be. Klein flipped his hand and placed the floating propeller on the waist of his back. Crunch. The floating propeller had 4 ring-shaped grappling hooks, one on the left and one on the right, firmly grasping his waist. The 2 jet pipes on his back immediately spewed out powerful winds. Let's levitate. Klein's feet left the ground as he slowly flew up into the sky. This thing was a little good. He could control it with his mind. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The little fox, who was originally bored and playing with fire, was very curious when she saw Klein fly up into the sky, descend, and run laps below. I'll try my speed, Klein thought again. Phew, the force of the wind increased. He transformed into a shadow and flew out. Down, front, back, left, right. His speed wasn't slow at all. Furthermore, he could turn nimbly in the air. Klein tried for 2 minutes and gradually grasped the control method, becoming more and more adept at it. He was even more agile than he was on the ground. On the ground, he could only move forward, backward, left, and right. He could move up and down in the air, and his speed was faster than his running speed. Woo, woo, woo. The fox chased after him on the ground as though it was saying, Master, take me flying. Klein laughed and landed. He picked up the fox and continued flying. After flying for a total of 5 minutes, Klein was already familiar with the operation. I'm not playing anymore. There are still many resources on the ground waiting for me to gather. Klein smiled as he landed and put away the floating propeller. In this catacomb, not only were there silver treasure chests, there were also a lot of resources. Wood plus 2/0, stone plus 1/5, iron plus 1/8, copper plus 1/2, black vine plus 4, black vine fruit plus 2. He looted everything. There are still 6 excavations left today. Let's take a break first. Klein needed to observe the hints in 5 directions first, then go to the market to sell some goods. He was gonna charge top dollar for a bunch of runes. The upgrade scrolls needed to runes as well as the runic speedblade, and the pot also needed it. There's fresh air in the caves above. The catacombs below are extremely dangerous, full of booby traps and meager supplies. Keep digging. The ground is full of lava, but there are 3 treasure chests high up. Dig to the left. There's a one-eyed lizard and some resources there. Dig to the right. A nest of poisonous insects is waiting for you. You can try turning into a pig's head. Klein took a glance at the cave ahead. With the floating propeller, he could easily avoid the lava on the ground. However, the next cave would only have 4 directions to choose from. Klein temporarily didn't have the ability to dig into the magma. If the 4 directions of the next catacombs were extremely dangerous, I shouldn't be so unlucky. There's no need to be so cautious. Klein patted his cheek and muttered, I don't want to think too much. I'll go put it up and sell it first. He opened the trade channel. Goods on sale. Seller. Klein 182.56. Products on sale. 2 one-eyed lizard meat. Requirements. Any runes. Inventory. 2. Products on sale. 2 yellow sand octopus meat. Requirements. Any rune. Inventory. 4. Products on sale. 800 grams wheat bread. Requirements. Any runes. Inventory. 1. Products on sale. 600 milliliters water. Requirements. Any runes. Inventory. 3. Klein listed 4 items in a row. Among them, wheat bread was obtained from Jack and Tom. The meat of the one-eyed lizard and yellow sand octopus only had some nutrients and could only be used. It didn't have any extra effects. It was worse than a meat farm. Therefore, it was also emptied out. If this meat was kept for too long, it would gradually rot. In contrast, the rock armor crocodile meat had a special effect. Even if it wasn't fresh, it had to be eaten. The reason why the water was only 1,800 milliliters was because there wasn't much stock. Although he had prepared another 3,500 milliliters today, the overall consumption was high. After drinking, stewing, watering the meat field, and so on, there was only 2,100 milliliters left. I wonder how much I can sell it for. My price is definitely one of a kind on the market. How many people are willing to exchange runes with me? Klein closed the interface, picked up the shovel, and dug the tunnel in the dark. The rune transaction would definitely not be completed in a short period of time, so he didn't need to pay attention to it for the time being. Chapter 32. Discover the kobold's lair. After recuperating, Klein waited for the next day to arrive. Everyone was either chatting to relieve boredom, gathering intelligence, or paying close attention to the trading channel. When they saw food or water, it instantly attracted the attention of many people. Today, there were actually people trading food and water earlier than Klein had expected. It was basically a small portion for trade. It could be dozens of grams of meat or dozens of milliliters of water. The price was even more treacherous than Klein's. But there were still people who were willing to trade. Compared to the fly meat on the shelves of others, in comparison, Klein was acting like a nouveau riche. In the World Channel, why does Klein feel like he has endless supplies and can't finish them every day? Sigh, the gap is widening. If I'm not wrong, the one-eyed lizard and yellow sand octopus are definitely crypt creatures that he killed. Does anyone know how many catacombs he has dug up? As far as I know, the highest record is William's 12 catacombs. He's a special forces soldier. The entire channel was in heated discussion. There were already people considering whether or not to exchange with Klein. At the same time, Klein had already arrived at the 20th catacomb. Just like the hint, the ground in the 20th catacomb was filled with lava. If he fell down, he would melt. Red lava. The entire catacombs was hot, and waves of heat assaulted him. Little Fox curled up in Klein's arms, lowered her head, and looked down. Then, she retracted her head in fear. Its 4 claws hugged Klein tightly, afraid that it would fall into the lava. Klein floated in the air. The cool breeze from the propeller behind him made him feel slightly more comfortable. Open the treasure chest and leave as soon as possible. Klein quickly searched. Although it was at night, the red light emitted by the lava illuminated the entire catacomb. The catacomb wasn't big, but it was high enough. Klein continued flying upwards. Above him was a protruding rock mass. It was about 5 meters long. Klein landed on the rock mass. First, he saw 3 treasure chests 2 steps away. They were placed side by side. They were all bronze treasure chests. What a pity, they're only bronze treasure chests. Klein suddenly frowned. That was because he saw a black cave at the end of the rock mass. The entrance of the cave was covered in a black membrane. Someone came to dig it? Klein approached carefully, his gaze never leaving the black membrane. In front of you is a special cave. There are 6 kobolds in it. All the treasures they have painstakingly gathered are piled inside. As long as you fly in the air, the kobolds can't do anything to you. Klein was stunned. Kobolds? Because they were in groups, the danger factor for kobolds was 42. If they were alone, their lethality would be limited, and the danger factor wouldn't be that high. According to the illustrations, kobolds could use weapons and set traps. They liked to collect treasures. As long as one avoided the traps and floated in the air, they could use the runic crossbow to fire 1 shot at a time. Open the treasure chest first. Klein squatted down and chose to open the treasure chests first. The 3 treasure chests were opened at the same time. System notification. Bronze treasure chest +3. System notification. Earth runes +1. System notification. Wind runes +2. System notification. Water runes +1. System notification. Silver block +2. System notification. 300 milliliters Coke +1. There's Coke? It's not labeled. Klein put the items away. It was a pleasant surprise to see 4 runes appear from the 3 bronze treasure chests. I've gathered all the wind runes. I can create a speed blade. Klein opened the creation interface. Perfect runic speed blade. Wind rune 2 halves, iron 51/15, silver 4 halves. Klein chose to create it. With the notification, the creation was successful. A straight-edged blade about 1.5 meters long appeared in Klein's hand. The blade's width was about 2 fingers placed together. The surface of the blade was bright. There were silver-white patterns from top to bottom. Klein waved it a few times, and it was very light. Furthermore, there was no reminder to add a soul this time. When I wave it, it feels like I'm being pushed by a gust of wind. It's too easy. As expected of a runic knife. Klein couldn't put it down. He slashed more than 10 times without any effort. And every time he brandished the knife, the shadow of the knife flashed past quickly. It was silent and as fast as the wind. Let's test its sharpness. He slashed. He aimed at a bronze treasure chest. A cold glint flashed. The treasure chest split into 2. It was as though he was chopping wood. Good blade. Klein raised the knife and checked the position of the blade. There was no curled blade, so it was intact. Compared to it, the machete is simply trash. Klein clicked his tongue. Machetes were unable to cut through copper and iron. The 3 treasure chests were all broken into copper pieces by Klein. Let's head to the next catacomb. Klein held the runic crossbow in his hand and brought the little fox through the black membrane. The stuffy feeling instantly disappeared. It was replaced by cool shade. It wasn't completely dark inside. Klein also saw the flames. The entire catacomb was long and narrow, pitch black. It was like a piece of intestine, with a slight bend in the middle. Klein remained in the air as he looked down. Golden prompts kept appearing. There were many traps on the ground. The sound of the propeller spewing gas wasn't quiet at all. In the long and narrow catacomb, it was abnormally ear-piercing. Klein had no intention of concealing himself. He would use his voice to lure the kobolds out and use his aerial advantage to exterminate them. Chapter 33. Kobold Squad? They'll shatter with a single touch. 2 balls of fire were approaching. With the help of the flames, Klein indeed saw a squad of kobolds. Although they were called kobolds, their heads didn't look like dogs. Instead, they looked like lizards. Their skin was dark brown or black. They were also wearing tattered clothes. The 6 kobolds' pupils flickered in the darkness. They had already noticed Klein. As for Little Fox, she had been placed on the ground by Klein. The traps placed on the ground had all been destroyed by Klein's knife, stone, and other means. They were either turned into iron resources, copper, or stone resources. The kobolds weren't as fast as Little Fox. Only then did Klein dare to place Little Fox on the ground. There was only one mission for Little Fox. When the kobolds approached, she would quietly circle to the back and block the kobolds' escape route. Little Fox hid among the lush cold play grass and only revealed her head when the kobolds passed by in a hurry. She circled to the back like a thief and hid in a corner. Klein smiled inwardly when he saw the little figure slip past. Then, he looked carefully at the 6 kobolds on the ground. All of them were wielding spears and brandishing them into the sky as they roared. They tried their best to pretend to be scary, using the fact that they had many companions around them to bluff. If Klein didn't know their information, he might have really been intimidated. They're just looks. Klein took out the runic crossbow and aimed it at one of the kobolds. Abba Abba! One of the kobolds screamed in panic. The remaining 5 kobolds understood and took out their short spears. They made a projection pose. Klein raised his eyebrows. They recognize runic crossbows? That's true. The illustration shows that they can use tools. They've probably seen them before. They're smart, and they can also use javelins. Klein flew quickly in the air. The short spears slid past him, but they didn't hit him. Shoo! The crossbow arrow pierced through the kobold's chest. It struggled twice on the ground and died on the spot. System notification. Soul +1. Klein received the notification. The other 5 kobolds screamed in exasperation, but at the same time, there was a hint of fear. They couldn't reach him at all. What should they do? Run. They didn't need to communicate and hurriedly threw down their torches to escape. To them, they could clearly see their surroundings at night. They came with their bright torches to bolster their courage. Some creatures in the catacombs were afraid of fire. Klein was speechless. Should he praise them for their intelligence or cowardice? The kobolds weren't fast. Klein followed closely behind. Both sides were moving. It wasn't easy to hit with the runic crossbow. Klein put away the runic crossbow and switched to the runic blade. The kobolds didn't have any will to resist. If they were alone, the danger factor was probably only a dozen or so. They mainly relied on unity to win. If Klein hadn't been in the air, the kobolds' morale wouldn't have collapsed so quickly. They would have even fought with Klein. Die. Klein quickly flew past one of the kobolds. His huge head flew high into the air, and his body, which had lost its head, staggered a few steps forward and fell to the ground. Klein did the same thing and killed 2 more. The remaining 2 kobolds had already escaped to where Little Fox was hiding. Little Fox suddenly rushed out and jumped, landing a claw on one of the kobolds' throat. Peefed. Blood spurted out of its neck. It was then kicked down by Little Fox. Klein happened to catch up, and he stabbed the remaining kobold in the back. The knife and sword easily pierced through its chest. The kobold team was completely annihilated. Klein sheathed his saber. 6 kobolds corresponded to 6 souls. Including the kobolds that Little Fox had killed, the sample was on Klein's account. Even though there were few treasures on this trip, he had already reaped a bountiful harvest. The short spears and javelins that the kobolds had left behind were all kept by Klein. These weapons could also be broken down into resources. Little Fox raised her claws and came to Klein's feet, flaunting her battle achievements. Klein silently touched Little Fox's head and laughed. "I'll reward you with another piece of meat tomorrow." Bow. Little Fox was instantly extremely excited as her head rubbed against Klein's palm. Klein dissected the 6 corpses and obtained a batch of blood, meat, and bones. The meat tasted sour and smelly. It didn't taste good at all. The blood had no nutritional value. There was no need to mention the bones. Klein decided to put up all of the kobold's flesh and blood on the market. As usual, he only collected runes. 5 units of meat and 1,000 milliliters of blood were divided into 3 groups. The taste wasn't good, but the quantity was the best. If he pursued a price-performance ratio, there might really be people who would want it. Let's go in and take a look. After dealing with the trading, Klein held up the torch the kobold had brought. He brought Little Fox and walked into the darkness. What resources would there be in a kobold's treasure? In the World Channel, the topic of Klein started again. Klein put up 3 sets of kobold meat and blood. Each set had a high cost-effectiveness ratio, causing another wave. Does anyone want to eat kobold meat? It sounds a little awkward. Have you guys looked into the details of the meat that was just on the shelves? It's actually warm. Big Brother way. Are you still going to buy it in the middle of the night? Yeah, it's super fresh. However, it doesn't seem to be delicious. The price-performance ratio is so high. I'm tempted. The kobolds sound so powerful. Has anyone encountered them before? Everyone's focus was mainly on Klein digging the catacombs at night. It was already risky to dungeon during the day, let alone at night. Just how far had this fellow progressed? Everyone was extremely curious. Many people had sent private messages to Klein, but they had yet to receive a reply. Klein seemed to be shrouded in fog, filled with mystery. Chapter 34. Strength type scroll? Klein's strength has increased. It was cool all around him. Klein held his torch and lit up his surroundings. If he were to walk alone, he would feel a chill run down his spine. He wasn't afraid of the dark and walked around. The kobolds only set traps at the periphery. Inside were their residences and places of activity. It was impossible for them to set traps. Over there, Klein shook his torch and saw a large treasure chest in the corner at the end. It was made of wood and was painted with brown-red paint. It was much larger than the few treasure chests that Klein had encountered before. Be careful, there are traps set inside the treasure chest. Be careful of the bullets and arrows inside. Standing in front of it is equivalent to courting death. Out of habit, Klein looked around and indeed found the traps. It wasn't surprising that the kobolds would set more than a dozen traps outside and place a few traps inside the treasured treasure vault. Klein thought for a moment and said, "Then I'll go to the side." Klein called Little Fox over and carefully reached out his shovel. He inserted it roughly. With a crack, the treasure chest was opened. Shoo, shoo, ping. 3 short arrows shot out. Klein walked into the treasure chest and looked down. Damn, it's more than half full. System notification. Large wooden treasure chest +1. System notification. Silver block +6. System notification. Gold block +6. System notification. Wind rune +1. System notification. Water rune +1. System notification. Fire rune +1. System notification. Crystal +5. System notification. Excellent runic lamp blueprint +1. System notification. Low-grade strength enchantment scroll +1. A series of resources notification popped up. There were runes that Klein needed, as well as new materials such as crystals. There was also some jewelry, but most of them were trash. They were broken down into 4 gold pieces, 6 silver pieces, 6 jade stones, and 3 crystals. The excellent runic lamp blueprint isn't bad either. I'll learn it. Klein grabbed another eye-catching item and muttered to himself, another scroll. What can this scroll do? Enchant weapons? He first went to the crafting interface to take a look at the synthesis list of runic lamp. This item is a daily runic device that can be used for illumination. Its effects far exceeded that of torches and bonfires. It required crystals and fire runes. The description described it as having low energy consumption, but it was unknown whether it was true or false. I just happened to find crystals in the treasure chest. I'll synthesize it directly. Klein currently had 5 fire runes, which was the rune with the most inventory. System notification. Fire rune 1, crystal 2, copper 2, silver 1. System notification. Excellent runic lamp has been successfully forged. System notification. Adding 1 wood allows it to be used for 60 minutes. An object in the shape of a trophy appeared in Klein's hand. The top was a crystal ball, the bottom was brass. Add 1 piece of wood. When Klein saw that he was using up wood, he felt no heartache. There was plenty of wood. It was good as long as he didn't use up his souls. The addition of wood was complete. In an instant, the runic lamp shone with the effect of an incandescent light bulb. It lit up the surroundings. Not bad, a long-lost light. Klein couldn't help but sigh. After coming to the subterranean world, he wasn't too used to relying on fire to light up at night. With the runic lamp, he could greatly improve the quality of his nightlife. In addition, the runic lamp had 2 modes of illumination. One was to shine in all directions. The other was to focus the light into a beam, just like a flashlight. Klein played with it for a moment, and he used the light to examine the scroll he had just obtained. The material was paper. When he unfolded it, he could see many abstruse characters. They were densely packed, like tadpole characters. Low-grade strength enchantment scroll. After using the scroll, one can condense a power charm in any living creature's body, and their biological strength will be enhanced. There was no need for any materials. Power charm? Can it increase strength? Any living creature can use it, which means. Klein lowered his head to look at the enchantment scroll and muttered, using low-grade power enchantment scroll, the target of the enchantment. Me. The enchantment scroll trembled slightly. In the blink of an eye, it turned into ashes, as though it had just been burned. The ashes surged towards Klein's body. There was some heat on his chest. Klein pulled down his collar and saw a strange rune condensing at the burning spot. From light to red, it gradually disappeared, completely returning to calm. Klein could clearly sense that his strength had increased by a large margin. It was even more amplified and exaggerated than drinking the one-eyed lizard's blood. However, the muscles on his body didn't change. This is only a low-grade enchantment scroll. If it was any higher, Klein's eyes were burning. If there was a low-grade enchantment scroll, then there must be a high-grade enchantment scroll. If there was a power enchantment, then there must be other enchantment methods. Perhaps even flames, lightning, and the like could be enchanted. There were still many mysteries in the catacombs world that were worth exploring. Klein stayed here for more than 10 minutes and plundered everything. The useless items in the wooden treasure chest were all broken down into resources. After doing all this, he raised the runic lamp and headed to the next catacomb. At the same time, people began to complete the transactions with Klein. As the runes arrived in his account, they were about to meet the material requirements for the low-level runic bases upgrade scroll. Chapter 35. All the base materials have been upgraded. Klein listed 4 sets of items in the trading channel. If all of them were successfully exchanged, he would be able to obtain 10 runes. Before Klein headed to the next catacomb, the system sent back the news of the successful exchange. Wind rune +1, water rune +2, rune +1. 4 sets of items were sold consecutively. Among them, the kobold meat was the first to be sold out. It was evident that everyone valued the price-performance ratio more. As for how it tasted, whether it was disgusting or not, they didn't care. Survival was more important. Although it was a kobold, it wasn't a human. Under extreme hunger, it could still be eaten. With 4 sets of runes in his hands, all he needed to do to use the low-grade rune base upgrade scroll was to obtain another wind rune. At this moment, Klein was holding a runic lamp as he explored the 22nd catacomb. This catacomb only had a bronze treasure chest. The other 4 directions were either empty, or there were only crypt creatures and no resources. When opening the treasure chest, Klein hoped to open a wind rune, but the result wasn't satisfactory. Not to mention the wind rune, there were no other elemental runes either. There were only some materials and 2 bottles of milk. At this point, Klein only had 3 excavations left for today. Klein encountered a difficult problem in the next subterranean cavern. Continue digging down. The poison gas will suffocate you to death. There's an iron treasure chest in the subterranean cavern ahead. It might yield good items. It would be dangerous to enter now. There are 2 night whistlers lurking in the darkness. They can display their ferocity at night. The subterranean cavern behind is empty. Excavate to the left. There's a wooden treasure chest that can be opened. There's only barren soil in the catacombs on the right, as well as some animal traps. Of the 5 directions, the catacomb in front had the best supplies. There was an iron treasure chest. Klein didn't pay attention to the other directions. However, heading to the catacomb ahead was risky. Klein could either wait until daybreak before excavating the catacomb ahead, or he could head to the catacomb on the left. He could wait until daybreak to obtain a stable income from the iron treasure chest. If he continued digging, he would have to try his luck. Perhaps the resources he would excavate the next 3 times wouldn't be as good as an iron treasure chest. Forget it, let's call it a day. I'll excavate the catacombs in front of me at daybreak. Klein was still a little unwilling. Light. He opened the biological atlas and looked at the information on Night Whistle. If it was lurking in the darkness, wouldn't he be able to illuminate it with his runic lamp? Klein searched with questions. The results were out. Night Whistle. A creature that looks like a wolf or a lizard. It is completely black and has wings. When night falls, it will enter a berserk state. Compared to its daytime self, they are 2 different creatures. Ability. Night Berserk. Weakness. Daybreak Weakening. Danger Factor. 15/35. Daytime Danger Factor. 15. Nighttime Danger Factor. 35. Compared to nighttime, daytime and nighttime were indeed 2 different creatures. There were 2 night whistles in the basement. The degree of danger was self-evident. Furthermore, they had wings and could fly. Klein's advantage in the air was completely gone. He thought for a moment before saying, "It's simply the opposite of a carrion jackal." No, the night whistle is at least better than a carrion jackal during the day. Carrion jackals are weak at night and can only roar. After reading the information, Klein dispelled his only thought of taking a risk. If the night whistles didn't have wings, he could give it a try, but they did so there was nothing he could do. First, he turned on the water condenser and added 40 pieces of wood. There was still a long night ahead. Klein continued to immerse himself in practicing his blade and crossbow. During this process, he could clearly feel the effects of the strength talisman. The runic speed blade in his hand became lighter and lighter. He did more than 100 push-ups without even taking a breather. He trained for more than 3 hours in a row. Klein was tired. The runic crossbow's 100 shot limit was exhausted, so he could only add another soul. He was covered in sweat, and his clothes were dirty to a certain extent. Klein dipped a towel into the water and wiped his entire body. If it weren't for the fact that there wasn't too much water, he would have wanted to take a good bath. It was already quite extravagant to use clean water to wipe his body. Others wouldn't dare to do so. They wished that every drop of water could be used to drink. The used sewage couldn't be poured out, so he washed his clothes and pants. Finally, he used some water to do a simple wash. As for drying them, it could be set up by the campfire outside the base. Furthermore, Klein could make clothes. After consuming 3 pieces of cloth, a piece of lizard skin, and 6 cotton threads, a set of close-fitting clothes appeared in front of him. It included shirts, pants, underwear, socks, and shoes. It was a 5-piece set. Klein changed into clean clothes and felt much more comfortable. Klein woke up early in the morning. There were a few transaction records in the system notification record. After a night, all the items on sale were sold out. He obtained 2 wind runes, 1 water rune, 1 fire rune, and 2 earth runes once again. With the original runes, Klein now had 4 wind runes, 5 water runes, 5 fire runes, and 6 earth runes. Klein didn't bother to wash up and took out the low-level rune base upgrade scroll. Low-grade runic base upgrade scroll. Water rune 5/3, earth rune 6/3, wind rune 4/3, fire rune 5/3, soul 12/5, iron 68/50, copper 61/50, stone 80/50, wood 22/50, sand 100/100. He had used 40 wood to make water last night, or he would have had enough materials. This matter was easy to resolve. Klein directly put up a piece of fine single-horned sandhound meat onto the trade channel. Half a piece of sandhound meat for 50 pieces of wood, and the stock was 2. In less than a minute, 2.5 pieces of sandhound meat were sold. With that, the materials requirements for the upgrade scroll had been met. Chapter 36. Runic Base Upgrade. Klein held a low-level upgrade scroll in his hand. Following his confirmation, a large amount of resources were deducted. Like a power enchantment scroll, the low-level runic base upgrade scroll gradually turned into ashes. However, the ashes didn't fuse into Klein's body. The ashes were blown away by an invisible wind and flew in all directions. The number of ashes continued to increase. Like a swarm of bees, they swept through the entire runic base. The ashes stuck to the ceiling, ground, and walls. The entire runic base began to tremble as the ground expanded at a visible rate. The walls were also growing taller. 1 meter, 2 meters, 3 meters. Woo, woo, woo. Little Fox was startled awake as she shrank into Klein's embrace in fright. The little fellow was fierce in battle, but at a time like this, it was scared out of its wits. It was suspected to be acting cute. Boom. Klein could clearly feel the ground beneath him rise up. This is an additional layer? Or is it floating? Klein couldn't help but imagine. It would be great if he could float. The entire upgrade process took a full minute. System notification. The runic base has been upgraded. System notification. Excellent runic base upgraded to perfect runic base. At this moment, the runic base was no longer shaking. The interior decoration was completely new. It looked even more detailed. The walls were snow white, and the wooden floor was decorated with patterns. Furthermore, the interior was no longer a room. This is a bedroom. They gave a large bed for free? Klein seemed to be in a bedroom. There was a bed and a wardrobe. Light entered through 2 windows on a wall. There was only 1 bedroom, and the area was no different from before the upgrade. Let's go out and take a look. Klein walked out of the room. Outside was the hall. The area was about the same as the bedroom. There was a brand new fireplace. In front, the large iron door was half open. Klein walked towards the door and looked curiously. The floor outside wasn't sand. Klein walked out of the door and was surprised to find that he was on the 2nd floor. He was standing on a balcony that was made of stone. Or rather, a gazebo. It was a semicircle with a 1.2 meter tall stone wall surrounding it. Klein stood on the balcony and looked down before turning back. This is an ancient castle? Klein had a strange expression. The interior was modern, but the exterior was in the style of an ancient castle. The overall look was dark. Let's go downstairs. Klein entered the hall and followed the winding stairs to the ground floor. The area below was larger and more spacious than the upstairs. The barbecue grill, meat field, and so on were all piled up below. The main door also became an iron door. Klein pushed it open and walked out of the runic base. This was about 12 to 13 meters tall, equivalent to a small castle. Klein faced the base and kept retreating until his back hit the mud wall. Little Fox did the same thing by his side, following his every step. The entire castle was filled with a heavy, ancient, and simple feeling. It stood there, looking indestructible. Klein took a stroll around the runic base. He was quite satisfied with the upgraded base. In the entire world, he was probably the only one who had upgraded the runic base. After washing up, he had a simple breakfast. At this moment, he went to check the notification. It had already changed. There's an iron treasure chest in the catacombs ahead. It might yield good items. 2 pitiful night whistlers are hiding under the soil. They're praying that they won't be discovered by other crypt creatures. Klein picked up the shovel and began digging. After 20 or so excavations, he dug through. He put on a levitating propeller, a runic speed blade in one hand, and a runic crossbow in the other. The two stepped into the black membrane. In the 23rd catacomb, Klein first caught sight of the iron treasure chest not far away when he entered. Over there, Klein simultaneously noticed that there were 2 mounds of sand near the iron treasure chest. Upon careful observation, he noticed that there were 2 pairs of eyes under the sand. They were similar in color to the sand. It was easy to miss them. Woo, woo. The fox secretly tugged at the bottom of Klein's pants. Klein squatted down and deliberately patted the root of the sand at his feet. At the same time, he lowered his voice and said, "Little fox, pretend that you can't see." The fox understood. Although night whistlers were weak during the day, they could fly, so it wasn't easy to kill them. Therefore, he would pretend to open the iron treasure chest and suddenly launch an attack. "I'll catch them off guard." Klein took a step forward, his gaze always focused on the iron chest. Little Fox followed by his side. She raised her head and swaggered around arrogantly, ignoring the sand pile. A human and fox crossed the sand pile and went around to the back. Klein turned his head and made a hissing gesture at the little fox before tiptoeing back. At that moment, the 2 sand mounds also slowly moved. Whoosh! The sound was faint. The 2 night whistlers revealed themselves. They looked like a mix between wolves and lizards. Their bodies were pitch black and patterned. They had wings on their backs, and their mouths were as long as whistles. One of their tails was split into 2. They seemed to have the same idea: sneak attack. Little Fox turned her head, and Klein had already raised his runic blade. The 2 sides met. Klein grinned. The 2 night whistlers were stunned before they realized the danger. They hurriedly flapped their wings in an attempt to escape. Whoosh! The blade flashed. Only the night whistler's head was split in 2. Just as the other night whistler took off, Klein took a step forward and stabbed through the fellow's neck. He drew his blade and blood spewed like a fountain. Chapter 37. Chapter 37. Perfect Strength Bracers. System Notification. Soul +3. System Notification. Soul +3. The 2 night whistlers provided Klein with 6 souls. Among the crypt creatures that Klein had killed, this was the one with the most souls. Fortunately, it was daytime. If it was nighttime, the 2 night whistlers would be enough for him to drink a pot. Klein conveniently collected the 2 corpses. System Notification. Night Whistler Meat +10. System Notification. Night Whistler Blood +100 milliliters. System Notification. Night Whistler Skin +2. System Notification. Night Whistler Bone +8. As usual, he checked first. He checked the details of the meat and blood. Night Whistler Meat. The meat is full of fat and tastes greasy. If eaten frequently, it will make the creatures restless. The current satiation index is 3.5 stars, with a comprehensive score of 66. Night Whistler Blood. Consume after boiling. Once consumed at night, the physique will be slightly strengthened without any side effects. The meat wasn't very useful. It could only be eaten or pressed for oil. But the blood had a special effect. Klein licked his lips and poured all of the 100 milliliters of blood into the stone pot. He placed it on the grill, added wood, and lit a fire. The blood was boiled first. He still had to open the iron treasure chest. In the corner, Klein came before the iron treasure chest. The golden prompt said that there was no danger. Open the treasure chest. System notification. Iron treasure chest +1. System notification. Earth rune +2. System notification. Sweet fruit seed +1. System notification. Perfect wrist guard blueprint +1. Klein raised his eyebrows. Another perfect blueprint. Furthermore, there was a fruit seed. Sweet fruit seed. The main body is small and doesn't need to be watered often. It can also grow a large number of sweet fruits that are rich in vitamins. Perfect strength bracer blueprint. With strength, the strength bracer is your reward for living at night. It will increase the strength of an arm if you are a woman. Good stuff. Klein was delighted. It could increase his strength again, and it was even a runic device. Learn the blueprint, Klein read. A light flashed. Learning successful. He quickly opened the blueprint. Perfect strength bracer. Earth rune 5 halves. Wind rune 1/1. Copper 10/21. System notification. Earth rune 2, wind rune 1. Copper 4. System notification. Perfect strength bracer successfully created. Klein got a wristband. It was about 5 centimeters long and dark yellow. There were a few characters that were very close to the power symbol that Klein saw last night. Klein extended his right hand into the bracer and pushed it up, trapping his arm in the middle of the bracer. The bracer had a suction force that stuck to the surface of his skin. Following that, Klein clearly felt a warm current flow through his right arm. It flowed endlessly. It was as though he had injected a surge of energy into his right arm. Klein lifted the iron treasure chest with his right hand, feeling much more relaxed than before. Klein took a deep breath and said, "There are still some resources on the ground. I'll first plunder them before drinking the blood." There was fragrant rice tree seeds. The remaining 3 earth runes were just enough to produce 2 runic planting pots. Klein plundered all the resources in the catacomb. Wood +2/2, iron +1/6, copper +7, stone +2. The large amount of materials consumed this morning were replenished a little. Klein added all the charcoal into the grill and increased the intensity of the fire. It still took some time to boil. During this period of time, Klein didn't idle around. He first created 2 fine runic planting pots. Total consumption: 10 iron blocks, 10 stones, 10 copper blocks, and 2 earth runes. The planting pot was round, the diameter was the size of a wash basin, and the depth was about a meter. With the planting pot and seeds, he also needed soil. Under normal circumstances, the soil dug out from the catacombs wouldn't be fertile, making it difficult to use the pot. However, this wasn't an ordinary pot. Excellent runic pot. Even if the soil was poor, it would become fertile if placed in the planting pot. The prerequisite was that you added a soul. A soul was equivalent to fertilizer. Klein made 2 pots of sand and buried the seeds. A fragrant rice tree seed and a sweet fruit seed. After that, he added a soul into each pot. Excellent runic pot. 30/30 days. The number represented that the soul was valid for 30 days. Klein placed the pot on the balcony of the 2nd floor of the base. He then watered the 2 pots. By the time he was done, the blood of the night whistlers downstairs was already boiling. I wonder if I have to swallow it while it's boiling, or can I wait until it's cold? Klein moved his nose closer and took a whiff of the smell. After it boiled, the pungent smell was almost gone, and the color of the liquid also became lighter. It didn't look like blood. Klein tried to take a small sip, but his tongue was immediately scalded. He could only wait until it was slightly cooler before he started drinking. I hope the effects of the medicine don't disappear. Klein blew on the stone pot. It was too hot for him to put his mouth on, unless he wanted to burn himself. He had some healing medicine on hand. Chapter 38. A new player has arrived at Klein's territory. Gulp. Klein drank the last mouthful of warm night whistler blood. After boiling it, the taste was actually not bad. It wasn't as disgusting as the last time he drank lizard blood. There's no change? Klein sat quietly for a few minutes, but there was no change in his body. Should I wait until night? Or is it already ineffective? From what he knew, he could only wait until night before he could verify it. Klein put the stone pot away and took out a large jar of blood. 1,200 milliliters of rock-armored crocodile blood. It could be used to temper melee weapons. It also had a certain chance of improving the quality of the weapon. Klein then took out the runic speed blade. The way to temper a weapon with rock-armored crocodile blood was relatively simple. There was no need to heat it up. All he needed to do was smear the blood onto the weapon. Klein smeared the runic speed blade with the crocodile's blood bit by bit. After smearing it a few times, the blood of the rock-armored crocodile was immediately halved. Every time it was smeared, the blood would quickly disappear, as though it had been absorbed by the blade. The runic speed blade didn't change at all. Failed? Klein scratched his head. Let's try using another weapon. He took out the machete. Following the same pattern, he smeared the dagger with blood. System notification. The exquisite machete has been successfully tempered. System notification. The exquisite machete has upgraded into perfect machete. Is it a probability problem? Or is it because it's a runic weapon that it's more difficult to upgrade? Klein pondered for a moment and smeared the remaining crocodile blood onto the runic speed blade until it was completely absorbed. The runic speed blade still didn't respond. It's most likely because the runic weapon was too high grade. Klein put away his tools and prepared to go to the next catacomb. Boom! Suddenly, a 2.5-meter-long crypt creature collapsed in front of Klein. It looked like a leopard, and a bloody scar appeared in the middle of its forehead. With a thud, its head was split into two. Klein didn't levitate in the air, nor did he use the runic crossbow. Instead, he faced it head-on and killed it in close combat. During this period of danger, even Little Fox wanted to take the initiative to attack. Sand leopard. The danger factor is 26, but that's all. Klein slowly put away his runic blade. 2 wounds appeared on the back of his hand. They were scratched by the sand leopard. This was already the 29th catacomb. Today's 1st and 7th excavation. More than 2 hours had passed since Klein walked out of the 23rd catacomb. During this period of time, he continued to dig according to the hints. In order to train his knife skills and increase his combat experience, he would always do it alone. He didn't rely on the Little Fox, nor did he use the runic crossbow. Up until now, Klein's strength was truly astonishing. The lizard's blood gave him an extremely fast reaction speed. Along with a runic speed blade that could cut through metal, it wasn't a problem for him to face crypt creatures with a danger factor of less than 25. This sand leopard had a danger factor of 26. It was fast enough to leave 2 wounds on Klein, but it wasn't a problem. It was just a flesh wound and a little blood. Klein took out half a bowl of sticky healing medicine and smeared it on the back of his left hand. When the healing medicine touched the wound, it was very cool and the pain was quickly alleviated. After smearing half a bowl of healing medicine on the wound, the pain was gone. It's almost noon. After plundering the resources, I'll rest in this catacomb later. Klein rubbed his belly, which was already growling. He had put his heart and soul into every battle today, so he had used up too much energy. After a round of plundering, another batch of resources was obtained. Starting from the 24th catacomb to the 29th catacomb, the 6 catacombs mainly brought 2 crafting blueprints and 6 runes. 2 wind runes, 1 fire rune, 2 water runes, and 1 earth rune. Klein had already learned the excellent crafting blueprint for machetes, so he planned to put this one on the market and exchange it for another crafting blueprint. The other perfect blueprint for making soft armor wasn't made of complicated materials. It was made of copper and iron, as well as a wind rune and an earth rune. Klein was currently wearing a very thin piece of armor, just like a piece of clothing. It could protect his chest, abdomen, back, and other critical areas. Furthermore, the runic armor's defense was astonishing. Ordinary swords could only leave a scratch on it, and it was impossible to pierce through it. Klein entered the runic base. Little Fox followed closely behind. I'll have instant noodles for lunch. I must add more meat, haha. Klein dug out 2 packets of instant noodles in the upper catacomb. If Little Fox were to eat as well, he would have to add more meat, or she wouldn't be full. Woo, woo. When Little Fox heard about eating, her eyes were like 2 light bulbs. As for what instant noodles were, she wasn't sure. All she knew was that her master's food had never been sloppy. It would definitely be delicious. On the balcony, Klein had already set up a barbecue rack. He added charcoal, wood, and started a fire. On the stone pot rack, he added water and waited for it to boil. At the same time, he sliced a few types of meat. Now, Klein had too much meat on hand. The meat and blood of crypt creatures that tasted bad and had no effect were all placed on the trading market. A runic device manufacturing blueprint or a runic device finished product. Most players were willing to exchange runes. As for the runic device manufacturing blueprints, no one was willing to exchange it with him for the time being, even if the price he offered was very tempting. There was no need to mention the finished runic device. Most people would keep it for their own use unless they had extra materials to make it again. While Klein was focused on cooking, the space on the left side of the mud wall in the catacombs fluctuated. 2 men and a woman had arrived in the catacomb. The 3 of them were fully armed. They stood apart upon entering and observed their surroundings vigilantly. Over there, the 3 of them were all attracted to the castle not far away. Chapter 39. There's actually a castle here? And instant noodles? The entire catacombs world was incomparably huge. In the first few days, it was already not easy for 2 players to meet each other. It was even more difficult for individuals to meet each other one after another. Xaviera first met the retired scout, Charles, and then they met the young man, Paul. Charles had been a soldier and had extraordinary fighting abilities. On the first day, the first underground cave he dug, he met a crypt creature. It took him a lot of effort to kill the crypt creature. After that, he had to fight 2 battles to the death every day. Now, his strength was extraordinary, and he also had runic weapons. Paul and Xaviera were relatively weaker, but after meeting Charles, they gradually improved. It seemed that no matter what the 2 encountered, the well-informed Charles would definitely be able to solve it. But what was going on with the castle in front of them now? They looked at Charles, hoping that Charles would be able to give an explanation. The resolute-looking Charles shook his head and said in a deep voice, "This is also the first time I've seen a castle. I've never seen it in the catacombs before. Brother Charles, what should we do? Are there game NPCs inside?" Xaviera said in a low voice. She was afraid that if she made too much noise, it would alert the creatures in the castle. Such an ancient castle suddenly appeared in the catacombs. There was something strange about it. "I think it's possible." The young Paul nodded. Charles thought for a moment and said, "Don't go near it first. Take a look around the castle. If there's danger, immediately evacuate this place. Also, search the nearby area to see if there are any treasure chests." "Okay," the other 2 agreed. "Let's go." Seeing that the 2 of them were nervous, Charles smiled and said, "Don't worry, there's no danger here. There might be more resources hidden in the castle." The 3 of them did not think about other players at all. Everyone had the same runic base. How could a broken stone house be a tall ancient castle? "Follow me." Charlie walked in front. Among the 3 of them, he had the best equipment. He had a runic dagger and a layer of perfect light armor on his body. Xaviera also had a runic dagger. Because the runes were not enough, Paul could only use a fine straight dagger. The 3 of them first came to the front of the ancient castle. The door was locked tightly. They began to circle. They were still more than 10 meters away from the ancient castle when Xaviera stopped and twitched the tip of her nose. "Do you guys smell something special? It seems like instant noodles?" Yes, it was instant noodles. The 3 of them exchanged glances and couldn't help but swallow their saliva. They had eaten barbecued meat and buns recently, but to be honest, the stimulation to their taste buds was very dull. There were no condiments. The 3 of them couldn't bear to exchange food and drinks for condiments, so they had been in a stalemate. Now that they smelled something that seemed to be instant noodles, they salivated wildly. Their stomachs couldn't help but grumble. "It shouldn't be instant noodles, right? It might be another smell. Continue investigating." The 3 of them followed the outer perimeter and arrived on the other side of the castle. "Quick, look, up there." Paul's eyes were sharp, and he saw a figure on the second-floor balcony. Xavier rubbed his eyelids and exclaimed, "It looks like Klein." "What?" Charles and Paul were shocked. "Why is he here?" I'm not sure, but he seems to be making lunch." Could he be making instant noodles? The 3 of them guessed that it was possible, and their eyes widened. "FK. This guy was carefree. It makes people envious. Should I get close to him? Why not? Maybe I can pull him into the team. Also, I have to ask him about this ancient castle." Charlie made a decision and took the lead to walk closer to the ancient castle. On the balcony, Klein was humming a tune as he cooked instant noodles. He unintentionally lowered his head. When he saw the 3 figures approaching, he frowned slightly and muttered, "Another bunch of players. What a coincidence. They actually appeared at this time. Furthermore, there were 3 of them. If they were up to no good, he would have to delay his mealtime later." Below, the only woman shouted, "Excuse me, are you Klein?" Klein placed his hands on the handrail and looked down at the 3 of them. He said coldly, "Is there something the 3 of you need?" "If there's nothing, I want to eat instant noodles. Don't disturb me." There was a moment of silence. After a moment, Charles said loudly, "Mr. Klein, I'm Charles. I've heard a lot about you. These are 2 of my teammates. I would like to ask you if you are willing to join our adventuring team. You should know that the deeper you dig into the catacombs, the more danger you will encounter. The crypt creatures will gradually become stronger. With teammates taking care of each other, the chances of survival will be higher." Klein remained cold. The 3 people below looked at each other. "Mr. Klein, can I ask you a question?" Charles's attitude was always polite. To be able to live a few days on his own, he was no simple character. Klein paused for a moment and said, "Please leave as soon as possible after asking your questions." Charlie said loudly, "Mr. Klein, is this castle a special building in the catacombs? We want to understand this information. If we encounter it in the future, we can be prepared." He was a scout and placed great importance on information. "It's not a special building in the catacombs." Klein changed his tone and said playfully, "Do you guys want to come in and take a look?" Chapter 40. The 3 of them are actually so cautious? A tour? Xaviera and Paul were intrigued as they hurriedly looked at Charles. "Captain, shall we go in and take a look?" Charles looked at them and asked, "Is Klein inviting us? Do you want to?" The 2 of them had eager eyes. Perhaps Klein would even treat them to a sumptuous lunch. Charles muttered, "Don't go in. There might be a trap. I think there's a problem." The 2 felt a chill in their hearts. Indeed, his originally cold tone had suddenly softened. It was too strange. The 3 people below were whispering. Klein couldn't hear them. A moment later, Charles said loudly, "Thank you, Mr. Klein, for answering our questions. We won't be going in the castle. I hope you won't mind if we disturb you." With that said, the 3 of them turned around and left. They headed straight for one of the earthen walls and began digging. Klein watched them and saw that the direction they were digging in was the catacombs he had come to. However, they didn't leave immediately. Instead, they came out after digging the tunnel and sat down to eat not far away from the tunnel. Very cautious. Klein sighed. The 3 of them were considered smart and didn't have any greed. Klein thought for a moment before saying, "It's best if they don't do anything petty. Let's cook first." Klein focused on cooking the instant noodles. After adding the pieces of meat, the entire pot of instant noodles was filled with a fragrant aroma. The instant noodles didn't need to be cooked for too long. If it was cooked too long, it would lose all its firmness, and it wouldn't taste good at all. He took it out of the pot and placed it in a bowl. "Are you sure you can eat it?" Klein asked Little Fox on the table. "Woo, woo, woo." Little Fox patted her belly. "All right, it's an crypt creature after all. You can't compare it with cats and dogs." Klein filled a bowl for Little Fox. The noodle soup was bright, and the meat floated up and down. The air was filled with fragrance. "Let's eat." Klein took out all the remaining noodle soup. He stood on the balcony and ate the noodles while observing the movements below. Slurp. He took a mouthful of instant noodles and enjoyed it. Charles and company were roasting meat and sipping water. Although there was the aroma of roasted meat in the air, it felt like instant noodles to the 3 of them. An illusion, it was all an illusion. They couldn't help but look in the direction of the ancient castle. They were envious. After a moment of silence, Charles said, "What the hell is this ancient castle? I asked the people in the channel, but no one knows. Hey, I also went to the world channel to ask, but no one knows. Someone has already sent a private message to Klein. Let's see if he'll answer." Speaking of which, it was indeed a little dangerous just now. Thankfully, we were smart and didn't fall for it. Could it be that this fellow's resources were snatched from the players? It's too terrifying. Sigh. When will we be able to dig up instant noodles? Xaviera and Paul chatted non-stop. On the contrary, Charles was silent. Most of his attention was in the direction of the ancient castle. He was constantly on guard. Klein liked to do other things while eating. He began observing the situation below. Seeing the 3 of them obediently barbecuing meat, He opened the chat channel to watch everyone chat and gather some useful information. He had just noticed that everyone was talking about him again. That castle must be a special building in the catacombs. Klein just doesn't want to talk about it. Heh. Why haven't I encountered a castle before? Maybe that fellow was spouting nonsense. Everyone, the next time you meet Klein, you better be careful. From Paul's description, Klein's behavior is a little rash. The evil big shot Klein. Due to Paul's subjective description, Klein seemed to have become a sinister and terrifying suspicious person. Klein didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After lunch, Klein checked the notifications from all directions. Charles and company had come from the left catacomb, while Klein had come from the right catacomb. Now, Charles and company were going to Klein's previous catacomb, so Klein only had 4 directions to choose from. Excavate upwards. You will receive some resources. Pay attention to the bedbugs on the ground. Once you step on them, the smell will follow you for an entire day. It's enough to disgust you. Excavate downwards. There are 2 wooden treasure chests there. There's a nest of single-horned sandhounds resting. There's fertile soil in the catacombs ahead. It's suitable for planting. Excavate the catacombs behind. There's a gold-digging dwarf that carries a large number of items with it. You can choose to kill it to snatch the treasure or make some deals with it. If you want to kill it, there's a high chance that it will escape. Gold-digging dwarf? Klein was stunned when he saw the notification in the catacombs behind him. Are there any other crypt creatures that can be traded with? Open the illustration manual, Klein read silently. A list of illustrated manuals appeared. Searching for gold-digging dwarf. The list scrolled. It stopped at a certain line. Gold-digging dwarf. A type of crypt creature that walks upright. It's short and has a deformed appearance. Every gold-digging dwarf has a different appearance, but they always carry a big bag with them. Inside is the treasure they collected, and they are mobile merchants in the world of the catacombs. They were smart and trustworthy. They were born with an affinity for sand, which gave them an excellent ability to drill into the earth. They have a sense of danger. They are strong, and most crypt creatures cannot catch them. They like to search for treasures everywhere, and they also like delicious food. Ability. Quickly burrow into the ground. Weakness. Constitution is vulnerable. Danger factor. 8. Check the details of the skill. Quickly burrow into the ground. Able to burrow into the ground in a second. After reading the information, Klein had given up on the idea of killing the gold-digging dwarf. Although the danger factor of a gold-digging dwarf was low, its escapability was too outstanding. If he could make a trade. Klein lit the barbecue grill again. Perhaps he could try to lure it with barbecue. Even if there was no trade in the end, it would be nice to see a gold-digging dwarf.